Hello, and welcome to the eTech Podcast with me, your host, Ryan Morn. I have been involved in the development of electrified vehicles and machines since 2005 as an engineer and a business leader. This podcast is the product of my passion for electric and autonomous vehicle technology. I'm here to share knowledge from some of the world's leading experts, as well as my own insights. Join me as we accelerate the transition to cleaner, safer and smarter vehicles and grow the industry around the world. We've got something really interesting today, completely different to our normal podcasts. Probably the first time that we've spoken to someone who isn't an engineer or a technical person, but someone who's got an absolutely incredible insight into the EV industry. So I'm really pleased to be able to welcome Dan Caesar from the absolutely amazing Fully Charged show. So now on live shows, podcasts, and their YouTube channel. So Dan, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Ryan. It's great to be here.
So maybe if you could just start, Dan, just by giving us your background, because I know you've got a really interesting backstory.
Well, actually, I fell in love with the energy industry about 16 years ago, and I'm still here. But as you say, I've survived despite the fact of having very little engineering background. But I guess my background really is very much about communications and business. And before anyone goes to sleep, I've really made a career, I think, out of making energy, renewable energy in particular, and electric vehicles more understandable. So for me, Fully Charged is fantastic. But I actually started in the boiler industry, working as a director at Corgi, the old gas safety watchdog. And as much as I love boilers, I didn't find them particularly exciting, and neither does the average consumer, I think. So when heat pumps came along and solar thermal and solar PV, I gravitated immediately towards that and could see that was the future. That was well over a decade ago, and actually it's interesting how slow progress has been. But I think now we're really starting to get somewhere, and we see very much the transition to electric vehicles in particular is the spear tip to start talking about other energy technologies. So right. I love working on Fully Charged because it's very much about encouraging people to try electric vehicles, to buy electric vehicles, but also to change energy supply and maybe to get solar panels and batteries and start to thinking about living in a different way.
So you've always been a bit of a clean energy advocate or fan?
Yeah, absolutely. I think really, if you look at it, and you separate yourself from any vested interests you've got, it does make complete sense. Obviously you've got, fantastic resources available, whether it's the sun or wind or wave or tidal or whatever it may be. You've got that resource there. So not to capture it, seems strange. And I was working specifically on energy storage probably about 3 or 4 years ago, and that's often been hailed as the kind of the holy grail or the silver bullet. I hate those phrases, but I think for energy storage, it's particularly true that suddenly people have gone, well, actually, the variability or the intermittency of renewables might not be such a problem now. And I've seen a huge rise of people starting to deploy renewable technologies because now batteries are available. Battery technology has moved on so much in the last 5 years.
Yeah, it's fantastic. So just in case, and I almost cannot comprehend that someone wouldn't know what Fully Charged is, because it's such an amazing show. And well, I'll let you sort of give the backstory, but could you just tell us what Fully Charged is and what you guys do and where it came from?
Yeah, of course. So we don't take it for granted that everyone knows. In fact, one of the things I've got to do is make sure everyone in the world knows about Fully Charged. So that's a sizable task, but one we're really looking forward to. But it's a YouTube channel, really, first and foremost. It's all about the future of energy and transport. We focus very much on clean energy and electric vehicles. Our kind of mantra, if you like, is stop burning stuff. We think we're moving past the combustion era to a new era where we rely on other different types of cleaner technologies. And it was started by the indomitable Robert Llewellyn, who some people will know from Red Dwarf. He plays Crichton. Some people will know him from Scrap Heap Challenge. And as a broadcaster, an actor and a presenter, he started to run and launch the Fully Charged YouTube channel about 9 years ago.
Oh, wow.
And he just had a real kind of instinct and passion for electric vehicles and for energy in general. And he wanted to communicate that to a wider audience. So he did. What do you do? He set up a YouTube channel, of course, and it took quite a long time. It's still relatively niche, I think. For you, Ryan, you're excited about it. I'm massively excited about it. It's very common for me now to talk to people about electric vehicles in the pub, or when I'm with friends. It's now much more mainstream, but it's still relatively niche. So imagine what it was like for Robert back in 2010, trying to push water uphill and trying to promote the channel. And people said to him, the people he kind of looked at as inspiration for the channel, sort of said to him, look, just keep putting out the content. Yeah. And after 5 years, I think he had about 30,000 subscribers on YouTube, and I think it was probably purely a labor of love at that point, and then the last 2 or 3 years have been absolutely transformative. So after 9 years of running the channel, we're now at a position where just at the turn of the year, we reach 50 million episode views around the world over that sort of 8.5 year period.
Whoa,
and
50 million.
50 million, and by the end of this year, we are on track to hit 75 million. So we were 50 million in 8.5 years, and at 25 million in a year. So our growth is pretty extraordinary.
That's a hockey stick.
It is, yeah. We're definitely at the beginning of that, and I think the next 9 years, next decade or so, is going to be particularly exciting as these technologies come into their own. So, I mean, it's just a fascinating channel to work on. A lot of people are very aware of it, and Robert and the other hosts get a lot of attention. I'm quite happy working in the back office, not getting much attention apart from the occasional podcast. And it's a really fascinating challenge: is how do you turn a YouTube channel into a business? And all of us that work on it are really passionate about getting people to getting people out of combustion engine cars, maybe to walking and running and cycling, or an electric bike or electric motorbike, electric car, electric planes, electric trains, the whole gamut of electric vehicles of all shapes and sizes. And then equally about how do you power those things? You should be powering them off clean energy suppliers, or having your own solar, or powering off wind turbines, batteries, etc. So really, really interesting. But what's interesting about the channel, I think, is that it's got huge global appeal. Actually, our biggest market is not the UK, it's actually North America. And we've got lots of followers in Australia and South Africa and in Europe and all around the world. So it's a very exciting time for us, but really we are trying to now scale the business up. Because obviously suddenly a lot of companies are bringing out more and more electric vehicles, and suddenly it looks like this transition is set to happen. Whereas maybe as recently as 2 or 3 years ago, before Elon Musk launched the Model 3 Tesla, it was kind of still debatable as whether we would get to this point.
Yeah, it's incredible. The last sort of two or 3 years is really the industry's changed massively. So on for Fully Charged, then, so basically it started as, would it be fair to say, a hobby for Robert? But now
it was, yeah.
So you're a fully fledged business now. So you've got you're the managing director of the business, and how many staff have you got?
There's really kind of 4 core staff,
right?
So it's quite interesting because we get a lot of emails saying who don't really understand that we're such a small business still. We employ more people on a just-in-time basis when we're running live events, for example. We have a whole bunch of freelancers and subcontractors that work for us as well. But I think the growth and scaling up into a business can be quite swift now. So in time gone by, we get a ludicrous amount of people saying, can we do an episode of Fully Charged? And now it's at the point where we literally have to say to everyone, look, you can approach us, but the chances are very slim. I mean, we probably, for every one we do, probably turn down 100.
Wow.
That's the level of demand. But now, so I'm building out the business. So we actually do live events. So we're doing a live event in the UK in the summer. We're doing one in America in the fall. We're building out a new website and a whole host of other different things. So people, if they want to access our audience, can do so. But with that underlying theme of let's get more people to switch electric or switch to clean energy. You know, that's our kind of whole reason for being. So we're very focused and very motivated to play a positive role in that change.
Wow. So I'm guessing with five mouths to feed, five salaries to pay, it's kind of moved beyond Robert paying for it out of what I'm sure huge royalty checks he gets from his television work. So how is the business funded? Where do you generate revenue?
So traditionally, the business has been funded by through a crowdfunding website called Patreon.
Okay.
So that's Patreon, and we have about 3,000 people around the world who basically kick in a bit of money each month for us to be able to run the channel, to produce the content, and that has been absolutely the key foundation stone to turning it into a business. You do then get revenue through YouTube, so you via Google, so any advertising you carry, there's a kind of that's aggregated and you get some money from that. But we're not the world's biggest YouTube channel, so it's all relative. But those two things have been helpful. And then more recently, last year we did our first Fully Charged live event, and ticket sales and sponsorship and things like that, put us into a kind of a new level commercially speaking. So we are now on a pretty steep growth trajectory, but I mean, really, without the patrons that initially kind of put in money, it wouldn't have been possible to get to this point. And we have a hugely loyal fan base, but the guys who kind of contribute every month, we're sort of eternally grateful, really, that they do that. And it's quite nice because what it gives us is independence.
Right.
So it's quite difficult now, I'm sure, to read any newspaper or look at any website and not think, who's behind this website, who's behind this newspaper, and where is this information coming from?
Yeah. We're
entering a new era, I think, where media that actually is paid for by people rather than advertisers and sponsors is probably becoming more prevalent, and Fully Charged has that kind of independence and authenticity. So if we want to say, I don't think, X car manufacturer is doing a great job, or if we don't think Y energy company is really, committed to the energy transition, we can say that. And that's extremely liberating, and it's great for our audience because they know that they can actually get an impartial view from Fully Charged. So I think it's, very, very different from things that have come before it, and I certainly things like that, and the fact that it's good fun as well. So Robert and Johnny and the other hosts are really funny guys, and I think that's quite nice to be able to talk about energy and electric vehicles in simple terms, but with a bit of sense of humor as well. Makes the channel very popular too.
Yeah, because a lot of YouTube shows have gone down the sort of route of product placement or in-show advertising. But you guys really don't do that inside the program format, do you?
We really don't. We discussed it very recently, actually, and actually our kind of view was really that the individuals, the patrons, are contributing towards the channel, and that enables us to be independent. And then there's other things at arm's length, that we can do, like an exhibition, which people understand that if someone wants to exhibit at that, they've paid to be there. Obviously, on a YouTube channel, it really would blur the lines and muddy the water, I think, if we start doing things like product placement. So we cover what we want to cover effectively, and that's been really powerful.
Because recently someone said to me, so why, if the Tesla Model 3 is such a great car, why hasn't it won any awards? And I said, well, it's simple, because Tesla don't advertise in the mainstream motoring press. And the awards that the big magazines run are all about supporting their advertisers. And this guy was like, his jaw dropped to the floor. I was like, really?
That is true, really. I mean, awards are quite shallow in a way, really, aren't they? If you think about it, you enter a process and you might get nominated by your peers. Tesla is doing something that is completely alien to the car companies, and therefore the car companies back the car magazines and the car websites and the car awards, and so you could see that in trade media, you could see that in consumer media. I mean, if you look actually at the ad spend that Tesla have put in, it is virtually nil. So it makes their success even more extraordinary, really, in that actually the emotional attachment and the emotional investment that people have in Tesla as a brand, Tesla Energy as well as the cars, is so significant that actually I think it's really caught a lot of people by surprise. But yeah, the Tesla Model 3, I haven't driven one yet actually, but I'm hoping to soon. But certainly Johnny Smith, who's our car expert, our presenter, has been driving some in America last year. There's an episode on Fully Charged about that with the Colorado Tesla Model 3 Owners Club, and I believe Robert is driving one in the next couple of days. He's in Scandinavia at the moment.
Oh wow!
So yeah, he gets all the good jobs, right? But but so I mean, yeah, the Tesla story is fascinating. I mean, if you go back in time as recently as 3 or 4 years, all the textbooks and the theories about what's going to happen to the energy market, if you look at them now, actually they don't typically include Tesla, Elon Musk, what's going on in China, air pollution, all these things. And if you look at it in time, if you look at when air pollution really became a major issue, probably as recently as 3 or 4 years ago, and then you had the Tesla Model 3 launch, which was a real iPhone moment for the car industry. I'm not sure the car industry still realised that how significant that has been. And then you've also had other things going on like Dieselgate. These are the things that have really kind of changed the scenery, and suddenly now a lot of the car companies in particular are under real pressure to electrify, and we have this huge global audience that's really interested in getting into an electric vehicle and buying their first one.
The mood has definitely changed. I mean, I often say to people, when Avid's been around for sort of 14, 15 years now, and back then, our first company presentation, the first page, we talked about air quality and about climate change. And I actually got laughed at more than once, several times, enough times to take that page out of the company presentation, But now it's very much, it's the mainstream, although there's still, you do still get some climate change deniers, but the air quality, the Volkswagen Dieselgates really helped to drive that into the public agenda.
It has, and the logical position is that that's only going to heighten awareness around. You could see what's going on in the streets around the world with kids on climate strike at the moment, and that's not going away. That movement's not going to suddenly go, oh, we're bored of this, we're going to go back. We're going to go back to school. It's a very significant issue for the world, but for younger people in particular. And so air pollution as a driver is only going to increase. There is a much more of an acceptance around climate breakdown, as I would term it. But really, to mainstream electric vehicles and batteries and solar and things like that is more about making people think the technologies are cool. We live in a very superficial world where actually the average person isn't that engaged with climate change, isn't that engaged with air pollution. So actually the fact that, you'll think, oh, the Tesla Model 3 is a cool car, or the Rivian pickup truck is a cool truck, or, actually I kind of like the idea of, generating my own power. Once these, technology can be very cool. And I think that is the thing that will ultimately mainstream these technologies.
Yeah. How do you see it now? So I can imagine 3 or 4 years ago, there weren't that many electric vehicles being launched. So in terms of, content for the shows, there was stuff about, but now, like today, there's every other day, there's some major story somewhere, some new company launching something, some innovation in the electrification space. How do you decide what you're going to feature in the show, and where do those ideas come from for the content?
Well, we have weekly production meetings, monthly team meetings as well, and I would say the whole team are pretty aware of what's going on, but probably Robert is well plugged in, excuse the pun, to what's going on in the marketplace. Johnny is a car guy through and through. Likewise, he's very aware of what's going on, and I'm really, all over what's going on, because, as you say, it changes daily. So in terms of choosing what we do, we're very much about energy and transport. So it could be electric vehicles of any shape and size. It could be any type of clean energy. We do find at the moment we are having to be a bit reactive, because car companies are getting in touch with us and saying, can you cover off our new electric vehicle? Yeah. And obviously we want to cover those stories. So we're getting a lot of that sort of thing. I mean, we recently ran an episode on Honda's new e-prototype. So they've got a new urban electric vehicle that's coming out in the next year or so. It's very kind of cool, funky looking car. And Johnny did a walk around of that particular car, and we put that episode out. And I think we were one of only a handful of media outlets to run that story. And actually, we put our YouTube episode out at the exact same time as Top Gear put their YouTube episode out. Right. And that was interesting, because actually they've got I think 6.3 million YouTube subscribers. We've got a fraction of that, and actually our episode got way more views than theirs did. So it's quite interesting now that people are sort of asking for fully charged. So when it's the car companies launching an electric vehicle, typically they're saying, actually, we want fully charged to cover that, either exclusively or as one of just a small handful of media outlets. So that's interesting. We're getting a lot of requests. Wow. Literally never a week goes by without someone making an announcement about electric vehicles. There are some vaporware out there, some cars that are actually just nice images, and then there's some great new cars coming to market as well. So cars is a big feature of what we're doing, but equally we like to cover a whole range of other stuff. So in the recent past, we've done episodes on vehicle to grid, battery technologies. We're looking to do one soon on renewable heat, and we even do things as divergent occasionally as burgers that are not made of meat. So anything okay. Anything that kind of potentially has an impact on not having to burn stuff is kind of where we would look at. So we get some really cool offers, and it's becoming harder and harder to manage that process. Actually, we met very recently, and we must have discussed 30 different opportunities, and we could probably only really cover about 6 to 8 a month. So it's getting hard for us to choose which ones to do and to have to decline things. But the reality is that part of my role is really hopefully to help us to grow the business and help us to be able to cover more of the stories. But don't you think, Ryan, that there's going to be more and more of this sort of stuff over the next 10, 12 years? Every car company is just going to be rolling out more and more electric vehicles now. So this is a problem we're going to have to face, I think.
Yeah, it's interesting as it sort of transitions from brands like Tesla, obviously clear kind of trailblazer, but then the Nissan, the kind of more the people who were aiming at the niche and who were very early, they had a particular way of doing things and a particular approach. And now it's going more mainstream. There's the companies like Hyundai coming into the scene, kind of changing the way that they. Well, I guess they're more established marketing machines, kind of behind the products, and sometimes they're getting it right, and it's quite interesting to see. But sometimes the more established brands are really not doing a good job, I would say, of launching or talking about their electrified product. It just seemed there was some stuff out of Audi last week about second life batteries, and the whole sort of story had the potential to be really interesting, but it was all a bit confusing, and they hadn't really thought it through in terms of what the message was that they were trying to say, and that does seem to be the case. And the established motoring press still doesn't really know how to talk about electric vehicles either, I would say.
Yeah, we watched that with interest. I mean, I think that the advantage that early movers have, so it's hard not to mention Tesla in this conversation, so I apologize. Yeah. But the reality is that when they set that company up, they started with a blank sheet of paper. And that's, incredibly powerful, almost starting like bunch of software guys saying, well, we're starting from scratch. How do we do this? And as time has gone on, a bit like you showing a presentation with climate change and air pollution on, Tesla was kind of laughed out of the room for a long period of time, not taken seriously. And some of that still pervades the industry. But there are much more awareness now amongst the manufacturers that actually, Tesla have got something of an advantage and are doing some clever things. But I think a lot of the car companies felt, they kind of didn't really see the rate of change when it came to batteries and what that might mean for the range of these vehicles in particular. They've been surprised by that. I think they've been a bit flat-footed in the way they've responded to that. And even now, as they try and move towards electrifying their cars, they've got this issue that they've got this huge, these huge assets that are sunk into, petrol and diesel engine cars. And they're really struggling almost internally. So that's why I quite admire what people like Nissan Renault Alliance have done, because they've been quite proactive. And you can see the Koreans, Hyundai and Kia in particular are doing a good job. But it has been really, really hard. And we watch avidly, at what the different companies are doing. And a lot of them really are struggling to work out how to approach it. And the real realization this year, I think, in the last few months this year, is the supercharger network that Tesla have built to enable Tesla owners to have comfort and know they can drive around countries, and it's relatively straightforward. And the battery supply that Tesla have secured, I think largely through Panasonic, puts them actually a long way ahead. And we're now seeing this term constraint of supply in terms of batteries rear its head more and more, where actually if you haven't got your supply chain nailed around, it's actually, you can create a great car, but you might not necessarily be able to supply them. There's a lot of pent up demand there for some of these cars. So it really is fascinating to watch, I guess, what a very sophisticated business is in the car companies. They're built for a different era, effectively, and to compete with the likes of Tesla. And I mentioned the other one that we're very fascinated by, which is Rivian in North America, is proving quite hard for them. And there'll be a testing decade, I think, for the traditional car industry.
Yeah, I mean, the Volkswagen Group obviously were the sort of potentially the bogeymen, but their mistake kind of spurred a lot of this change. But then recently they've come out very clearly and said, we believe that actually to do this properly, you need the dedicated platform, and they've launched their MEB platform, and that's kind of, I would say, almost acknowledging the Tesla kind of business model and approach, rather than trying to do conversions of existing cars and kind of shoehorn an electric powertrain into a car that was designed for a diesel engine and what have you. But it's a massive challenge, that the legacy. It does, one of the things that I often think about, people, there's a whole list of buts. So you talk to sort of someone on the inside of a standard car manufacturer, and they go, but Tesla haven't made a profit, so they haven't shown that you can make this stuff profitably, and we don't have a license to go and burn money like they do. We've got to do for shareholders, etc. So and if you sort of look at what Tesla have lost in the last few years and compare that to what some of the OEMs are now announcing in terms of investment plans, it actually makes Tesla's losses look quite good value in terms of an investment. There's that whole the scale of what's required is starting to become clear, and I think there was this maybe an arrogance of, it's going to be very easy to build electric vehicles. We know how to build cars. We're experts at it. But lots of things that hadn't really been thought through, like the charging network, like the battery supply chain, because the automotive guys are used to suppliers kind of queuing up and wanting to supply them. So it's really, everything is different. There's some things, some similarities, but there's so much change in process right now in all of the business models in the automotive industry, not least in the media side of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating to watch. I mean, I love what we do at Fully Charged, and it's a real pleasure to work on it. I think it's really interesting to see the scale of the challenge for some of these companies, and I think they've been kind of telling themselves that it wasn't going to happen, or that maybe hydrogen electric vehicles would be the dominant form factor for these vehicles. And as I say, the speed of improvement in terms of lithium-ion batteries has caught a lot of people out, I think. But it's really, you could read a lot of books about technological change, about microprocessors and phones and all these different things, and you could conclude that actually we're just entering a new era and some of these manufacturers aren't going to make it. Yeah. And I think there is an argument to that. You know, I think there are some that won't make it through this process. I think there are some that will, but I think almost all of them have reached their peak. And I don't think any of them will be as big, because you've not only got the move towards electrification to factor in, but you also got the fact that actually electric vehicles require much less servicing. So that part of the business is going to be quite significantly diminished. You've then also got things like ride sharing and potentially autonomy to factor in as well. So I think, you know, I think they've peaked, these companies, and I think some of them will survive this transition, and some of them won't. But there's no doubt about it. You know, if you're still asleep now on this subject, I think you're probably going to have a big problem.
Yeah. So you mentioned autonomy. That's one of my favorite subjects. What do you see happening there? What's your view on autonomous vehicles? Because I guess you could argue there's autonomous cars, there's sort of big potential saving for using the assets and, well, removing the human driver, so they'd be more efficient point to point than an idiot driven car by a person. So they are maybe coming. What's your thoughts on autonomous?
Well, I think there's a bit of a way to go. I mean, I think that certainly this isn't my specialist subject. There's quite a nice episode of Robert driving the autonomous Nissan Leaf around London that we filmed on Fully Charged for about a year and a half ago. And so I think the technology can largely exists actually. But I think some of the other dilemmas in terms of how to roll it out are probably going to mean it's probably a little bit slower to market than some of the real kind of the people who are really kind of hyping technology. Right. But I've got a 6-year-old son, and I'd be quite surprised if he drives in the traditional sense. I think the next 10 years will change things very, very significantly. But how quickly remains to be seen, I think. Certainly, again, you know, Tesla have got some quite advanced features in this area. I think that if you take the big picture view, you'll know, of course, autonomous cars are going to be a lot safer than human-driven cars. But we also got some things to go through. You know, those classic kind of moral dilemmas that an autonomous car programmer might have to make. We've got some of those hurdles to get over, and I think the public perception is obviously going to play a part in that. So I think it will be a kind of probably a 3 steps forward, 2 steps back thing with autonomous cars for a little while yet. But I'm excited about the possibility of it, and I think it just completely changes things. And if I'm completely honest, the speed of technological change is only going to accelerate. Better technology is going to win out. There doesn't seem to be any point really for me in fighting it. You know, it's better to be at the front of these waves of technological advancement. So yeah, I'm interested to see how that kind of plays out really. But yeah, quite a few of the people we know in the industry are kind of saying, yeah, look, this is coming, but it won't be quite as quick as some people think it will be.
Right. And do you think you'll kind of pull more of that kind of thing into Fully Charged as well in the future?
So our core things that we cover are energy and transport, and they're kind of I guess what I call the immediate future of those technologies. Actually, I think as a channel, we have to not only cover those things well, but we also have to cover both entry level subject matter. So actually, Robert has inadvertently become a bit of an expert. So when he talks about CCS and CHAdeMO charging, 95% of the UK population wouldn't have a clue what that means. So I think more of that entry level coverage and episodes and content is going to be important to us to get new people interested in electric vehicles, new people interested in clean energy. But at the other end, I think we should be really pushing the envelope in terms of talking about new things. So certainly I would say that doing more episodes on future tech, whether it's autonomous vehicles, maybe how virtual reality might affect how much we actually need to travel. The future of planes, the future of trains, and all sorts of vehicles. I think we could certainly, Fully Charged has got the ability to kind of move into those areas as well.
Right. Because of course there's a huge electrification sort of revolution happening in other areas as well as cars, planes being one, and off-highway machinery and this kind of thing. It's and they're all interlinked for the same reasons.
Yeah, they are. I mean, it's all about the the ubiquity of electricity, the fungibility of electricity. It has got advantages over other types of technology, and hydrogen will play a role, I'm sure. But 5 years ago, the average car industry expert would have said hydrogen will take over from the combustion engine, and for smaller vehicles, that's clearly not true.
Yeah.
There will be some hydrogen, but actually, it's already kind of probably lost a sizable amount of that market that it thought it might have gained. And so it's really interesting because stuff will come out of left field as well, Ryan. There'll be things that we aren't even barely a glimmer in our eye that will come forward. So one of the things we were talking about just this week was covering nuclear fusion. So there's all these other technologies that are coming forward. It take a brave man to predict really what sort of technologies we'll be looking at in 2025.
I wish I had the video on there because my eyes just nearly fell out my head when you said nuclear fusion. There's two words I were not expecting to hear you say. What in particular? So you're talking like nuclear powered cars or planes or just?
Well, I mean, nuclear fusion. If there are various companies around the world working on that, and it's always been a bit of a horizon technology, i.e. it's always on the horizon. But there are certain companies now that believe they're getting quite close to effectively being able to provide sort of near limitless power. Wow. So as I say, it remains to be seen, but certainly it's on our list of episodes to do, and I think it will be very, very popular. It'll be really fascinating to see how progress is being made in that market. Equally, to bring us back down to earth slightly, obviously there's quite a lot of talk about solid state batteries.
Yeah.
And the next phase of batteries, and there's some absolutely fascinating stuff out there. But obviously, when you're reading any of the press releases, reading any of the announcements, you have to really kind of ground yourself and work out what's real, what's vaporware, what's somewhere in between. For every announcement, there's probably only, there's only a few that are kind of ready to go, really. So yeah. I think that it's, to come back to the car market, I think that we looked very much at, I would say Tesla is a big driver of what's going on right now. The second one, I think, is China. Yeah. I think, I had someone say to me about constraint of supply that it's a real problem that the manufacturers, aren't getting cars ready quickly enough. And I said, well, yeah, but nature abhors a vacuum at the end of the day. If Tesla or some of the challenger brands or Chinese brands can fill that gap, then they will do. I mean, you could look back to the American car market 40 years ago, and there's barely a Japanese car sold in America, and now I think the top 6 out of the top 7 cars sold in America are Japanese. Yeah. So don't rule out the Chinese manufacturers and what they could do for the marketplace. Yeah. And then the final thing, I think the big move is going to be, I personally believe that VW have woken up and are going to take this market very, very seriously, and their new VW ID kind of Golf equivalent is going to come out early next year, and they're going to produce it in volume fairly quickly and at a reasonable price. Yeah. And I think that will be probably another significant tipping point, not one tipping point, but there's a succession of different tipping points. And I think VW taking the market seriously will be a big move forward as well.
Yeah, agree. Couldn't agree more, actually. So in terms of the Fully Charged show and business, what's next for you guys? What do you see coming up in the sort of short, medium, and long term future?
Well, at the moment, we're working very, very hard on delivering our second Fully Charged live event in Silverstone. So that will take place in the summer, in June, and it's going to kind of double in size, that exhibition. It's a consumer show, but it's really fascinating, I think, for anyone who's an energy geek like I am to come along and look at all the different electric vehicles available, all different technologies, some really fantastic talks. That we're then going to take that model and run that show in America as well.
Right.
In the autumn, in Texas specifically. So those are the two of the most immediate projects that I'm working on currently. But actually, it's really as much as anything about growing the audience around the world. And so there's a whole range of different things that we're working on. But we're a scale up effectively, and that we're trying to get the business to grow, get the audience to grow. But really, we're kind of really very, very passionate about doing it. All the team work very hard, very long hours, because we're really trying to inspire people into changing their habits, I guess.
Yeah.
Giving electric vehicles a serious look and looking at other technologies as well. And actually, nowadays it's kind of hard not to go somewhere and not to have a conversation about it. People are kind of quite open-minded about it now. Whereas recently, as 3 or 4 years ago, it was that'll never catch on. Electric cars and milk floats, all that sort of thing. Now it's very hard. I mean, I've been into 2 Shell garages recently, and I've been asked by the staff in the Shell garage, as I drive a Hyundai Kona. I've been asked by them, that's an electric car, right? And the guys, the attendants at the Shell company are aware, and they're really excited about that technology. And actually, Shell, for example, are going to have forecourt chargers, as are BP and all the rest of it. So, now it's genuinely something you could talk about, and you go to see anyone, and it's quite hard to find someone who hasn't heard of Tesla or Elon Musk now, and that's extraordinary, isn't it? Really?
Yeah. No, it's that's the point we started on, I guess, about it becoming more and more mainstream. So just on the show. Because you kind of touched on it a little bit, and I think you're maybe not wanting to overly plug it, but I'm really, really interested in the show, and in terms of the format, like what is it you're actually, what is it? What are you doing? Who would be the right people to come to visit the show? Tell me all about it.
Oh, well, that's very kind of you. I was being very shy, wasn't I? It's not like me at all. But no, so we ran Fully Charged live at Silverstone last year, and we had 6,000 consumers attend, and it was just a terrific success. And we were really delighted because actually, until that point, you can imagine Robert had almost entirely had a virtual relationship with the Fully Charged audience.
Right. Yeah.
He'd been, getting tons of YouTube comments and going to stuff and people saying, I love it, but really he'd never seen a crowd there. So actually, when we started the idea of doing Fully Charged live, Robert is really absolutely lovely guy. I was really concerned that no one would come, and I said, look, don't worry about that. I'll take care of that. You've got a great audience. They're very, they're very avid, and sure enough, the show was hugely successful. And so this year we're going to be back at Silverstone on the 7th, 8th, and 9th of June. We've got the main exhibition centre there, and also the Stowe circuit as well alongside it. And we're effectively terming it kind of an accelerating festival of electric vehicle and clean energy technology. And we've got, tons of stuff there, Ryan. I mean, certainly when you get there to the car park, you'll get an electric transfer from the car park to the venue. So you'll get an electric vehicle. I think there's at least 100 Teslas doing that.
Wow.
Some electric buses, a load of other electric cars, taking people from the car park to the main venue. We're doing prizes and giveaways. We're going to have every electric vehicle that's available on sale in the UK there on site. Have an array of different exhibitors, from clean energy suppliers to renewable technology companies. We've got 2 big theatres, the Giga Theatre and the Mega Theatre, which is going to have about 30 different live sessions across the 3 days, with Robert Llewellyn hosting, Johnny Smith hosting, Maddie Moat from BBC's Do You Know, Helen Chersky, physicist and TV presenter. We've got loads of fun areas for big kids of all ages, such as the racing bug and lots of different interactive stuff. We've got garages full of classic electric vehicles, full of concept electric vehicles, test tracks for bikes and scooters. We've got a live music stage. So we've got Craig Charles from Craig Charles Funk and Soul Club doing Saturday evening sort of party in the paddock area as well. Manufacturing partners, so electric vehicle companies there, test drives. There's even a B2B day on the Friday as well. So I could go on, but there's just like tons to see there. So if you're in any way interested in energy and transport, it's definitely for you. It's a consumer show, but I guess a fair percentage of our audience are from industry as well.
Right.
But it is we're trying to make it fun and accessible. We're really, really excited about doing it. It was a huge success in year one, but we did it in a very short time frame with no team, no budget, etc. So we're particularly excited this year because we actually can be a bit more expansive.
Yeah.
If anyone wants to come along, tickets are available on fullychargedshow.co.uk. Right.
We'll put a link to that in the show notes below as well.
Thank you.
And the show in so Texas, whereabouts is that going to be?
Yeah, that's going to be at the Circuit of the Americas, which is the F1 track at Austin.
Okay.
So we had a lot of international visitors to Silverstone last year, and a lot of people from North America in particular said we've got to bring Fully Charged live to North America, and we said yeah, okay then. And then I got back to the office and I emailed them all one by one and said, okay, where would you have it? And they all said without fail their own city.
Yeah.
So I then spent a lot of time looking into different venues, and a lot of people expected that we would choose California,
right?
And we kind of looked at that as a possibility, but we felt that California didn't really need a nudge, if that makes sense. It's just pretty progressive, and then we looked at the size and scale and value of the Texan market, and obviously it is an energy state, albeit better associated with oil. But actually, if it was a nation, it would be the sixth biggest wind producer in the world. So they've actually got a lot of wind power there.
Wow.
They've got the most solar potential of any state in America. They're the best state for complementarity between solar and wind, and obviously that brings in batteries. They're really kind of up in the ante in terms of electric vehicles. So there's a lot more grist to the mill in Texas than there would have been in California. And also Austin's a very cool sort of hip place, so we're hoping people will come and spend the weekend with us. So we were looking forward to that as well, and we'll have the normal suspects there, but we've also got Rivian there. So Rivian are the pickup truck, an SUV truck that I alluded to earlier. Really fascinating company that have started with a blank sheet of paper, and they've got quite a lot of ex-McLaren people working for them, but they are actually an American firm, and I think they're going to do for pickup trucks and SUVs what Tesla have done for electric cars. So on Fully Charged, our best performing video of this year so far is on the Rivian, where Johnny takes a sort of up close look at that vehicle at the LA Motor Show, and that's had about 1.2 million views around the world already, that episode. So so we're having them there and some great hosts there. So we're really looking forward to going to America, and then the plan is if I can find the energy from somewhere, is that we'll also do one in Europe as well next year.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, but we want to spread the word, and as I said, if we can get more people to show an interest in electric vehicles and clean energy, then that's our objective.
I think you're definitely heading in the right direction. Great. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure, Dan. Thanks so much for taking the time out to join us today. Yeah, thanks for having me. It was really good to speak to you. Brilliant. Okay. So that's all we've got time for today. I really hope you enjoyed that. It's a fascinating conversation with Dan there. We went way over the amount of time that I thought we were gonna spend, but it was just so interesting. So if you've enjoyed that, please don't forget to subscribe to the channel, hit like, leave us a rating. Please do leave us some comments below. Don't forget, we will answer questions. So if you have a question that you'd like answering about electric vehicles, or a particular technology subject you'd like us to talk about in some more detail, send those in as well. We've got some really interesting episodes coming based on listeners' questions. So that's all. Thanks for taking the time to listen. I look forward to speaking to you again soon.